Welcome to this week's Divinely Feminine Dance. Welcome to my spirited living community, wherever you're finding me, on Instagram or Facebook and eventually on YouTube. This is where we gather each week to really honor the Divine Feminine in ourselves and each other. And as I say every week, this is not a gender-based thing. We all carry strong masculine, feminine energies within us all the time. And in this space, in our still pretty substantially patriarchal environment, community, world that we live in, we draw particular attention. We shine the light on, and there's so many of them, but I often kind of boiled it down, and I did this 20 years ago when I was writing my master's thesis on the same thing, to four kind of key qualities that define the divine feminine, and that is honoring our emotions, celebrating our intuition, honoring our bodies, which they really come under attack or are demeaned or debased in so many different ways in our cultures all over the world. And through our bodies, our connection to nature. And of course, that's a very ancient connection, which you can see in movies and books and all kinds of wonderful things. How women, and men, you don't do it in the same way, but how women cycle with the moon. Not so much now because we've got a lot of electric lights in the way. But this whole notion that we can embrace the qualities of compassion and collaboration and all of the things that our world so sorely needs. And I do that by playing with goddesses from around the world, images of the divine feminine from every culture. And so I'm kind of in a kick right now of looking at spring fertility kinds of goddesses. And the one that I'm bringing in today is Sheela-Na-Gig. And there's some debate and some mystery really around whether she was a goddess, exactly what she is, who she is. And she is actually one of the very first images, this heavy brass image that I have when I first started studying all this stuff 20-something years ago. This is Sheela-Na-Gig. Very in-your-face representation of celebration of our bodies, and particularly our wombs and our women's child-giving abilities. And she is adorned on churches all over Great Britain, also in France and I think some other places on the continent. And when I first learned about her, I thought it was fascinating that she is over church doors, and that she only appeared in a few places. Well, it's one of the things I love about doing this each week, is that I really, get to dive deep into some of these images and these representations of the divine feminine. And Sheela-Na-Gig, images of her are actually found in Romanesque churches, so way back centuries ago, in 60 different churches around Great Britain. Apparently the majority in Ireland. I'll show you just one of them, very similar to what I just showed you. But this, I don't know how well you can see her. You can see her, she's almost like a gargoyle. And she is often shown as a hag, as a crone, and which leads us to bring our attention to Sheela-Na-Gig as an early crone goddess. Now, you can definitely learn more about this too. There's a wonderful website called the Sheela-Na-Gig Project, and a guy, John Harding, kind of made it his mission for the last 20 years or so to literally physically travel all around Great Britain and anywhere that he heard any possibility that a Sheela-Na-Gig figure existed. And that's how we know that there are so many of them, because there isn't really a lot of information about her. And in fact, as I said, there's no sure thing about where she came from. Some scholars say that yes, she is indeed a pagan goddess of fertility. Others say that she was put there by early church fathers to warn people about the dangers of lust and and back then, when the human body was thought to be this bad, evil thing, back when they were killing witches and doing other horrible things, killing women who they called witches, which were basically healers. That's a whole other story. So the history of Sheela-Na-Gig is still cloaked in a lot of mystery. So I'm calling her a goddess, mostly because she does represent some really wonderful feminine qualities, and because it is the time of year that we celebrate fertility, when flowers are starting to bloom. I've got crocuses across the street in Riverside Park in New York City. The forsythia are coming out, which is so wonderful to see now after this winter and after this year that we've gone through. So the energy of rebirth and fertility and new growth feels particularly palpable and poignant and potent right now. We've just come past the spring equinox, which was this past Saturday, March 20th. And last week, I talked about Astarte here, who is the Canaanite goddess, and her one of her feast days was actually a week ago Wednesday, on whatever the day that was, the 17th, which was St. Patrick's Day. I talked a little bit about that too. The next day, March 18th, was actually somewhere around the world celebrated, obviously somewhere around Great Britain, was celebrated as Sheela-Na-Gig Day. And it was thought to be the time that, see if I can get the beautiful phrasing right that I found, that many, many suns ago on this very day, this is March 18th, the day after St. Patrick's Day and Astarte's Day, Sheela-Na-Gig decided to wade into a secret spring. But while doing so, she released the sacred waters, causing them to spread all across Ireland. She is the womb from which springs all life. So I love that image, and I love the notion that, which, we certainly don't ignore, but it was actually revered, the fact that women, because of their wombs, are honored as life-giving creatures, and that's the place from which all life comes. So she was also, let's see, some of my other fun things that I found. Sheela-Na-Gig. So Sheila is from the Irish form of Cecile, and gig actually was apparently an English slang related to women's parts. So that's how we get the Sheela-Na-Gig. This is the Cecilia with women parts showing and celebrating her. And she was, there was a scholar and author of Sheela-Na-Gig unveiling an enigma. She is an enigma, saying that she believes that they were carved by for local county churches to promote a successful birth. It's also thought that if you, and I actually have a friend who has seen this, that they still are, as I showed you that, carving, or the stone version of the Sheela-Na-Gig, over the doors. Some of them are low doors because they were shorter then, and of churches. And when brides were walking in, they would touch that lovely area, the vulva area, as a sign of good luck. And she's actually worn down there on some of these stone Sheela-Na-Gigs that you find above the church doors still in Ireland and in Great Britain. So that's the fertility piece. That was to bring fertility. And just recognizing that all life springs from her. So she seemed just particularly apropos for this time of fertility. And next week I think we've got Kuan Yin, because her celebration day is next week. And the week after that, I'm going to do Yaster, which is, if you saw the spelling of it, is where Easter comes from. And we'll do kind of more seed fertility stuff. A meditation song, not quite sure what. Today, I can't play it because I think social media has restrictions about playing someone's music, but there's this kind of indie alternative rock song that made it kind of big in the early 90s, like 1992 or something, from, what was her name? Singer-songwriter PJ Harvey, called Sheela-Na-Gig. And the words, some of the words were, look at these, my childbearing hips. Look at these, my ruby red lips. Sheela-Na-Gig, Sheela-Na-Gig, you exhibitionist. So look for that, go to YouTube and just, if you put in Sheela-Na-Gig, you'll get this very funky alternative rock song that you can use that to kind of stir you into learning more about Sheela-Na-Gig as well. Let's see, Earth Goddess, New Crone Goddess. And it's interesting, so we know the words hag and crone to be something negative, when the reality is that that crone is just a demarcation of time. If you are a wise woman crone, that means you've lived a long time, you have lots of wisdom. Haggard actually means an intractable woman. If you look at the early English meaning of it, and it's also I think it's also a demarcation, like a fence separating two, the mystical from the mundane, that kind of thing. So this gives us an opportunity to reclaim a lot of things that have kind of been demonized or worse around some of these beautiful goddess figures and images of the divine feminine. So I invite you to just hold that image of Sheela-Na-Gig, do your own little meditation. Maybe close your eyes just now for a moment. And whether you yourself have a womb or not, imagine the energy of growth and rebirth and fertility moving through you as the world around us, as the earth around us comes back to life in this springtime, as we move past the spring equinox. And just ponder and maybe journal about what do you want to give birth to? What do you want to bring to fruition that maybe has laid dormant over the winter months? How do you want to fertilize that growth? Literally and figuratively. Obviously, if you're a gardener, this is the time to be thinking about getting your garden ready for the spring. So I leave you with images of Sheela-Na-Gig, of a commitment to honor your own journey of growth, rebirth, resurrection, renewal, all of those things that we associate with Easter. But we know that Easter is also a moon holiday. It's actually set each year to be the first Sunday following the first full moon, which is coming up next Monday. I'll be doing my full moon meditation on the phone then. You can go to Spirited Living with Deborah Roth to see that, to find out more about that. So Easter is always the first Sunday following the first full moon following the spring equinox. So I love how these earth holy days are connected with the modern holy days that we know about today. So enjoy your own exploration. Let me know what you find, and hope to see you back here next week. Namaste. Bye for now.